Hello, I'm Tom Parker and welcome to Voices from the CEPS Ideas Lab. In this episode, I spoke with Andrea Renda. Andrea is Director of Research at CEPS and leads the Global Governance, Regulation, Innovation and the Digital Economy Unit. During our interview, we discussed the role the EU must play as a trusted global leader amidst the current global geopolitical turmoil, and the need for the EU and UK to collectively act to foster greater security for Europe. We also tackled the importance of collaboration across EU innovation hubs to build a world-leading position for Europe in the AI race. I hope you enjoy the episode. Andrea, hi. Lovely to see you. Welcome.
Lovely to see you, Tom.
Well, look, we're here at the Ideas Lab, so I want to know, why is Ideas Lab so important, and especially why is this year's Ideas Lab so important?
Well, first of all, Ideas Lab is important because it is the largest event put together by an independent think tank in Brussels. And CEPS is the largest and oldest independent think tank in Brussels. So we put together this show once a year to present new ideas and discuss the hot topics of the moment.
And last year's, were there any particular topics that stood out and then became important parts of policy within Europe?
Yeah.
And what do you hope for this year's?
So last year was, if I think about last year, it looks like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
We were, with the previous European Commission and EU institutions, thinking about how do we harness and untap the potential of technology, how do we work on the green and the digital transition together. Of course, it was the Ukrainian problem, so we were discussing already war in Ukraine, emerging war in the Middle East, but we were not in a dramatic moment like we are now. So we presented a number of ideas that still survive in the public debate here. I remember Ursula Pachel last year from the Bureau of Consumers came to present a proposal to create a commissioner for simplification and enforcement in the single market. Today we have one. Valdis Dombrovskis has that portfolio.
Yeah.
We had Robert Prass, one of our data scientists, proposing the creation of a large language model for Europe, and today we're discussing the CERN for AI. So we had a number of these proposals that were really, really important and survived. Calypso Nicolaidis came here as a professor from the European University Institute in Florence. She proposed the creation of a People's Assembly, a permanent People's Assembly, and the Letta report contained that proposal a few weeks after that. And then we had Michael Emerson and Stephen Blockmans proposing a staged accession process for Ukraine. And this is also something that Enrico Letta picked up in his report. So no wonder Enrico Letta is going to be one of our plenary speakers this year. Perhaps he's here to catch some more ideas.
Brilliant. And so there must be some that you're excited about for this year that...
Is excited the right word? I don't know. I'm a bit full of anxiety to some extent because we are in a very difficult moment. Europe, and this is something I've heard also inside the corridors of the European Commission, feels under attack. It feels under attack because of tariffs on trade imposed by Trump, the 25% just a few days ago. Under attack because the negotiations on Ukraine have excluded initially European leaders and are being led by Trump with Putin in a way that has really created an embarrassment for European leaders and for the support that Europe has given to Ukraine. It's also under attack because of emerging discontent, in pockets of discontent in many parts of large member states and smaller member states of the EU, but also because from the US, support to propaganda, for example, by parties like AfD, Alternative for Germany, has come directly from the leadership in the US. So there is so many things that conspire against the EU that it really sounds a make or break this year. And so we need to make sure that Ideas Lab doesn't go wasted. I cannot ask 1,000 people, the ones that have registered, to spend 2 days here without coming up with something concrete.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that is exactly what happens. I want to go into a bit more detail about the current economic and political landscape and EU's role, because you've said that the EU is under attack, but actually there's a certain sentiment that there is still so much strength in the bloc, and therefore there must be a huge role that the EU plays in the geopolitical climate and economic climate.
There is space the real question is the EU going to occupy that space? There is a potential role, but the question is, will the EU play that role? And at the moment we have not only the lack of a global leader that really pursues sustainable development, trustworthy digital solutions, and the reduction of poverty, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals more generally, the implementation of the Pact for the Future that was signed off by countries in September last year. There is no global leader that really does that. China does a little bit of that. The US is really backtracking from all the international organizations, suspending aid, creating trouble and problems for countless NGOs and international organizations around the world. So there is a lack of a global leader. The EU could be that global leader. The treaties on the EU really force the EU, oblige the EU to pursue sustainable development and peace, but the EU still seems divided. It's also a question of money and resources. The EU altogether could deploy very significant resources, even better if it does it with the UK, as it's emerging a little bit in the context of the Ukrainian crisis, with Starmer playing finally a big role, a role that some people in the press say, you know, the UK is rising to a level of persona that since the times of Winston Churchill it hasn't had. Perhaps it's too early to say. But in the case of the EU and the UK, there is a possibility of getting their act together and really mobilizing resources that at the moment are not being mobilized. And the problem is, how much money do we need and how much effort do we need in defense for Ukraine, for sustainable development, for the reduction of poverty, for the reduction of energy prices, for competitiveness. So until very recently, the EU only spoke about competitiveness. The narrative of Ursula von der Leyen was, we need to get back to competitiveness. Today, only a few weeks after she started her mandate, maybe it's a curse, because you remember von der Leyen once she started by saying, let's go green, and then the pandemic came, and a few weeks after she had to say, okay, let's go safe, and let's reduce the pandemic, or contain the pandemic. This year, in November 2024, this time around, she said, let's be competitive around the world. And today she faces not only a big trade war, but also the need to invest in defense. So her last words have been, let's rearm Europe, which is not necessarily about competitiveness, but about security.
Moving on from security, because that's a big area that is constantly moving at the moment, I'm sure is going to be discussed a lot through these corridors. I want to look at a little bit about competitiveness within countries within the bloc, but also collaboration, which is really important. We need to compete, or the EU needs to compete on a global scale, perhaps when it comes to AI technology and its advancement, but actually from a collaborative point of view, working with all of its other member states, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, there are different levels here, right? There is, generally speaking, the need to move from a European policy that was looking at member states and trying to give recommendations to member states so that member states would develop on their own and would become more prosperous, to a situation where the EU level tells member states to develop in a way that is functional to a pan-European, a continental industrial strategy that then leads to competitiveness, sovereignty, and security, right? In the case of AI is shaping up as being really the vital fluid of the future industrial transformation. From the Draghi report to the recently presented Competitiveness Compass, the European Commission is really investing on AI or deepening AI in different industrial verticals. And when we look at the current structure of the AI market in Europe, we need to find a solution that makes this possible, right? Deepening AI in different verticals. So today, and we at CEPS have done quite a lot of work in this field in mapping AI specializations in Europe. We find a limited number of excellence hubs in Europe, starting with London, and again, the inevitability of cooperation with the UK, but going on to Paris, Munich, Eindhoven, Frankfurt, and Kiev. So we find these two UKs that are very important for Europe in AI. We then started studying whether these hubs talk to each other, they collaborate scientifically. We find some emerging collaboration, in particular between London and Munich, but for the rest, all these hubs collaborate much more with the US than they do with each other within Europe. So we need to make them work together. talk to each other, develop together the future solutions that industry needs. And everything is to be put together into what we call a large-scale initiative on AI, one of the 14 ideas that we present this year in Ideas Lab. And this large-scale initiative would be aimed, first of all, at departing from the solutions that we have, the GPTs and the Anthropic Claudes, that in the opinion of many scientists will never tick all the boxes of trustworthy AI. So advance in developing trustworthy AI solutions and apply them in science, where Europe has important leadership, in robotics and industry, again, in different industrial sectors, and in the future of public services, so that we have trustworthy AI solutions spread over Europe and in a way that is human-centric, oriented towards sustainability, and very compatible with European Union values.
Brilliant. Well, it's the morning of the first day of the Ideas Lab, so we've got lots to come up. And everyone that's going to be coming here is going to be greeted with so much thought, leadership and discussion and collaboration in these halls. Is there anything that you wanted to particularly highlight that's going to come up over the next 2 days that you think everyone should be listening out for?
Well, first of all, I'm excited and I look forward to what seems to be shaping up as a very important event. We will have 38 parallel sessions. We will have 3 plenaries. We will have an evening with 3 immersive shows that will really vividly tell stories that are very important from all over the world. We have very important plenary speakers that come exactly at the time where their portfolio becomes important. Imagine the Commissioner for Enlargement that works on Ukraine, and we have prominent economists that will come and tell us how the EU can combine competitiveness with the bioeconomy, and so with sustainability and resource efficiency. We have a series of talks by Vice Presidents of the European Commission, Ribera and Virkkunen, that will tell us about the green and the digital transition. But we also have very high-level speakers on AI and on AI in science. So it will be a festival of ideas with a lot of very important speakers. What I want to get out of it is actually difficult to anticipate, because Ideas Lab is a very interactive event. And so the 1,000 people that we expect today and tomorrow will help us co-design and co-create what we'll get out with, right? So it's very important to ensure that all the sessions that we organize are very open to participation and to shaping up new ideas. I'm very sure that we can come out of this event with new ideas on how to approach enlargement, how to approach the current dilemma of Europe, how much to invest in defense and how to do this quickly. And one thing that I really look forward to is discussing with everybody, how can we make EU institutions more agile, more able to decide in a situation of crisis? And since we at CEPS have done a lot of studies on agile governance and how to decide in situation rooms, if you wish, in conditions of uncertainty, I think this is the right moment for us not only to be academic, not only to be theoretically sound, but to roll up our sleeves and come out of these 2 days that we have a good plan for how the EU can get out of this moment of crisis. We can do this, and I'm excited because I think we'll be in a much better place at the end of Ideas Lab than we are here at the beginning, mulling over, all the things that we're going to have to discuss for the next 48 hours.
Well, I loved how you described it as being a festival of ideas. And so I wish you all the best for this festival of ideas over the next couple of days. Hope Ideas Lab goes as well as it did last year, and I'm sure it will. And thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Thank you, Tom. See you later.
See ya. Bye.